Welcome. This is the Arcane Dialogue. We're going to be going into something that you and me have talked about before. We both find pretty interesting, and that is the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls has a lot of misinformation. I think a lot of the times people say that they just chalk it up to everything's fake, or a lot of misinformation gets looped in with them. So we've done a ton of research, and hopefully we've brought you the perfect introduction to what is the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm John.
I'm Josh.
And let's get into it. So the Dead Sea Scrolls is a really modern archaeological discovery, and it's an important one. And it might just even be the most important archaeological discovery in human history. So we go into the very beginning in 1947. Can you start us off? What happened in 1947?
Post World War II. I know that for sure. Was it post World War II? I think it was.
I don't know. Actually, yeah. There's actually some interesting information about that later we'll get into. But yeah, so there was to go really deep into the conspiracy. Yeah, it was post World War II.
So pretty much what happened in 1947 was there was a young shepherd. This is how the story goes. There was a young shepherd. Pretty much, he threw a rock in a cave, and he heard, I guess, clay pots breaking. He thought his goat went in there, but he was wrong. But he heard clay pots breaking, and in there he discovered what we know now today as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Pretty much the initial skepticism of what happened was many thought they were fakes. I mean, in 1947, you really don't find anything like that. But scholars later confirmed their authenticity, so they were legit. So after the finding in 1947, they were pretty much hidden for 7 years. There was a war going on, I believe, during that time. But archaeologists investigate and discover 11 caves in the Quran region, each containing different sets of manuscripts. That the scrolls date what they found. The scrolls date as early as 300 BC and as late as 100 AD. BC is before Christ. AD is post Christ. If you don't know as a viewer, over 1,000 ancient documents, some still being pieced together today, are still being found and discovered. Another information to know: the text predate the Codex Lenin. If you don't know what that is, that pretty much is the oldest Hebrew, which 1000 AD, the oldest Hebrew Bible known before this find by over 1,000 years, which is crazy to think about that.
That's insane.
Yeah, imagine like finding I don't know, something crazy history artifact, and then you figure out later that it's crazier than you think it is. But that's pretty much the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and how they were found.
I think it's interesting because Muhammad, the guy that he was looking for his goat and threw in the rock into the cave, to get the courage and go in there and look in the cave like the next day like that. If he didn't do that, it just never would have been found. And a couple things led up to, I guess, it coming to surface across the world, because once he had retrieved the manuscripts, it kind of just sat in his little village. They had it, I read somewhere, they had it on display in their village for a long time, just sitting out in the sun, the elements, getting hit with sand, wind, just destroying these things basically.
Yeah, just not taking care of it at all.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
what do you know? He's just like he found something cool, just like we all did when we were kids. He brought it home,
Yeah.
and laid it out. And it wasn't until there was a traveler that came through his village and went over and was like, "What is this?" And this guy, luckily, was a trader in these types of things. He was really interested in different like history artifacts. Old manuscripts. So he saw this and he asked Muhammad Abdib what it was, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I found it in a cave." And that kind of started the huge search for these things. Treasure hunters, scientists, people that were just trying to get them and sell them on the black market. And an interesting thing that I just read recently, you know how you said they're in 11 different caves?
Yes.
So it's really, really interesting because one of the caves, I think they have them numbered. So like cave 1, cave 2, cave 3. I think it was the 11th cave. There was pretty much nothing left inside of them. It was just like fragments. And that's when modern day science comes in, and we're still trying to decode these things even today. There's also a 12th cave. So recently there was a 12th cave discovered, and they didn't find any scripture or manuscripts in there, but they found the same linen that was inside of the other ones. They're on a certain type of parchment paper, all the other same ones, and they were all in the same type of clay pots. Those clay pots were found there, broken, the fragments of the pots, and there was also the same linen that they were wrapped in the. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking probably treasure hunters came through, or somebody already went through, but we'll probably never ever find where those things went.
You know, what's even crazier about the Shepherd Muhammad, he sold the Dead Sea Scrolls for $250. Like, that's amazing, right? Like, imagine like not knowing 70 years later.
Yeah.
It's like a famous thing that you did not know that was worth millions of dollars, and he sold it for $250.
Oh yeah.
Totally robbed him, you know.
He probably thought he got a deal too.
Yeah, he probably did.
He's like, "Oh, this was easy. I just found this garbage. Here's 250. That's easy."
He probably got a lot of bread out of it, dude.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
He probably made so much bread, milk,
Yeah,
all that.
1947 sheep herder.
I mean, they didn't have anything crazy. Maybe got a little more oil. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what's going on in 1947. But that's wild. And especially after it being sold for millions of dollars, you got to give it to the man and be like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where he's at right now. Maybe out deep somewhere, but
His son's
I apologize.
still living in poverty.
Yeah. I mean, so after going into the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think it's important to know what's in the scrolls.
Yeah, what's in these things?
Yeah, and that's the conspiracy of it all. You have to figure out why some of these things are being hidden, or you just gotta go into deep in with it. So, the scrolls contain a mix of religious text, right? Early versions of the Hebrew Bible, more than 1,000 years older than any other known copy. You go to the apocryphal text, books not included in today's Bible, prayers, laws, and prophecies from early Jewish groups, mentions of a teacher of righteousness and a wicked priest, possibly rival religious leaders.
Right. And there you said books not included in today's Bible, but there is also books word for word.
Yes.
Leviticus, word for word, is exactly the same as the Bible, right?
I mean, yeah, and they had the book of Isaiah, the famous book of Isaiah, word to word, which is crazy.
They had parts of Genesis in there.
And they had 39 original Old Testament books within the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's crazy. Like, they had the original Bible with them, you know? They had parts of the original Bible with them that we still use in today's.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the craziest part, because and the fact that it's in Hebrew, so anybody who speaks Hebrew can go to museums where these things are displayed, or find them online, the scanned PDFs, and you can read these things word for word. You can read them yourselves, and it's not like a conspiracy. You can go on and find these things and read them yourself. That's the craziest part. And this predates 1,000 years, the oldest one, the Codex Lenin. So it's honestly incredible.
I mean, during Jesus' time, in terms, you can say the Bible was never finalized. Jesus never said, hey, this is the Bible, this is how it is. I mean, people wrote during Jesus' time when it comes to New Testament. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But he never said, hey, finish this. And that's where you go into different religions with, like, regarding, like, oh, the New Testament is still happening. You have the Old Testament, or we are currently in a New Testament. But I feel like that's a shocking truth. What they found was like, oh, I mean, this is different. This is different what we have in today's world, you know?
Yeah, especially in a time where there's multiple stories going around.
Yeah.
And you have people, religious scholars, religious leaders, trying to determine, hey, what is the actual story? What are we going to push out? What are we going to put in the Bible? And this thing is just way before all of that, and it's telling the same stories.
Well, it challenges what is true, the singular true Scripture. What is the truth of the Scripture? And I mean, it's shocking. People did not expect for this to happen. So, a lot of controversy, you can say. And then you go, like I said, going off of controversy, more than 200 pieces of Dead Sea Scrolls have mysteriously appeared for sale. which I don't know much information on that. I feel like you know more than me when it comes to like it going for sale out of nowhere. So maybe you can speak on that. I don't know.
Right. So private collectors were hoarding these fragments. So as we mentioned before, there was 11 caves, and during this time, whenever they found the first one, it was like the bell went off, and everybody was going there searching for these things, because there was every time you open a new one, you could find parts of the manuscripts that weren't deteriorated yet or just fallen apart. So you have private sellers collecting these things, selling them on the black market. You have the scientists in England and in the United States trying to find these things and bring them back to life. Around 1947, there was a big group of scientists that had them laid out, and they were trying to recover these things. And for 70 years, they did more damage to those scripts than they did in the last 2,000 years in the clay, because the clay pots preserve them pretty well.
Yeah.
From the environment. So you have these different people trying to sell them, and it was found out that through a broker, a PBS did a documentary on it, which is really interesting. There was a broker who talked about his sellers would rip the different manuscripts up so they had more pieces to sell. And they're just destroying these things because they're trying to get the most bang for their buck. You know, you got 10 manuscripts and you start ripping them up, and now you got 20.
Yeah, and some believe more scrolls are still being found today.
Yeah.
What's even more wild is that, I mean, something like that should be sold to the people. I don't know. I feel like that should be sold for sale. It should be a historical document, you know?
Well, it should
and
be.
Everyone
yeah.
should have access to it. It should be sold. It should be known as science research. Like, it should be known as research in general, which is wild.
I think there's a museum in Jerusalem which has there's some that are pretty well kept together, and they have them on display there, and they're in like a low light room. They have people coming and checking them out, and they change them out every 3 months. But you can go and see them yourself. But there's also people like Hobby Lobby.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Hobby Lobby. So another thing was they were purchasing these things for millions of dollars to try to find parts in the text that lined up with their religious ideologies. So they would find things against maybe homosexuality or whatever else, and they were trying to purchase these things or the pieces of the manuscripts that aligned with their religious beliefs. But it was found out too, these same sellers were making fakes, and that's where a lot of this goes. A lot of people start saying, "Oh, it's all fake." You know, news breaks out.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying, "Oh, it's all fake." 13 out of 13 pieces of Hobby Lobby's was faked. But it's these sellers and going through and they're ripping them up, and then they're adding in fakes, because you can go online and you can buy 2,000-year-old parchment paper.
Yeah, imagine being an industry like Hobby Lobby and purchasing like fake documents that are ripped up together and like purchasing millions of dollars into that, and then you know it's fake after that. It's like, well, I could use those $1 million for like a boat or a yacht, you know?
I didn't know that they were that like religious. I didn't know Hobby Lobby was like that.
I don't know. Every time I went to Hobby Lobby, I don't remember much, honestly, because every time I went to Hobby Lobby, I hated it.
I did too.
You know,
my wife loves it.
Yeah, my mom would force me to go to Hobby Lobby for some reason, but I mean, she's a teacher, so.
They have like AI generated art framed that they're selling, like just the cheapest company.
And it's crazy too. I remember reading a documentary or listening to a documentary where it was talking about a treasure map in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is wild, right?
Oh, okay. So I did hear about that.
Yeah.
So like you said, there's religious texts, there's apocryphal texts, and non prayers, laws, and prophecies. But yeah, there's also a treasure map that was found in one of them, and it has yet to be found that we know of. And that one was taken and sold on the black market. So we don't know where it is. No one. Yeah. Scientists haven't been able to go through and
what do you
and read
think?
it yet.
What do you think the treasure map leads to? What do you think?
I don't know.
The Ark of the Covenant, maybe.
That'd
be crazy. That'd be crazy, right? Yeah.
But the Ethiopians already got it.
Yeah, supposedly, right? Supposedly. But going into like what's in the scrolls, right? You know, I think this matters the most to me, in my opinion, is the Book of Enoch. We can make a whole episode about the Book of Enoch.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's wild. Hopefully we can make an episode on it. But I feel like the Book of Enoch is lost text, right? We never knew this was legit. But they found like 11 copies of the Book of Enoch within the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
and once widely read in ancient times, but later banned by Jews, Christians, and Muslims, rediscovered in 1772, but dismissed as heresy.
Yeah.
But the Ethiopian church, right, the Ethiopian Christians, had the Book of Enoch the whole time. And people were like, no, this is not true. And then later we discover within the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we're still thinking it as heresy.
And the Ethiopian church, will you tell them how old the Ethiopian church goes back to?
Old, man. It is so old, which is wild, right? It's the oldest Christian church currently on planet Earth.
3,000 years
legitimate, which is wild. But what's bizarre about it, right? The Book of Enoch describes a city in the sky, flashing lights, and God's traveling back and forth, right? It's wild. And it tells the story of Enoch being physically taken into the heavens by being called, which is an angel, they say, is Uriel.
Yeah.
But this could pretty much be known as the first abduction in human history.
Yeah.
In writing, pretty much. Enoch describes a chariot of fire, right? When I look in the sky, right, and I see something I don't see, I call it a UFO.
Yeah.
I say, I don't know what that is. That could be an alien. But
Yeah.
back in the day, they could say a chariot of fire.
Yeah.
Maybe that was their known word for an alien.
Yeah. Or a rocket ship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that can go into a whole nother thing, right? Whole nother conspiracy I have. But what do you think about the Book of Enoch? You know, how interesting it is.
So it is interesting because I think it goes a lot. It's almost like it could almost be written off of the ancient Sumerian text, the Anunnaki, about the Anunnaki, because it's pretty parallel to that. But that's why it's cool, because if you're religious or unreligious, I think there's things that are truth to this. And he talks about going up into the city of the sky and literally being carried up by Uriel, this angel or alien, which I think is an alien, honestly.
An alien called Uriel? I'll be like, dude, you're cool.
Yeah.
Uriel?
That dude sounds cool.
Yeah.
And so when he goes in here, it's not, he calls it heaven, and he calls it going into the heavens, but he specifically mentions it being in almost like a room, because he quoted lofty ceilings.
Yes.
So he says there's lofty ceilings and flashing lights everywhere. So if you're in a spaceship, like an alien spaceship, I'm thinking like there's different consoles around, buttons, you know, and he says there's people walking around, gods walking around. And he also mentions there's 12 doors on this spaceship. And in the 12 doors, he describes them as different dimensions. So if you were to travel in space, that would be the best way, is to go through different dimensions or wormholes.
Yeah. And now I'm thinking, have you ever realized about 12 realms and how it's in like 12?
That's an important number.
12 is an important number.
In every religion.
I mean, if you think about it, even in comics, right? Was it Thor that had the 12 realms? He can travel through 12 realms. Thor can. I might be wrong.
Sure.
You know, in the comments, please say if I'm wrong. You can. But 12, 6, 3 are very important in my opinion.
Yeah, 12. Didn't Jesus have like 12 disciples?
He had 12 disciples. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 40 days, 40 nights. 40 is an important number. But a book of life that records past and future events. I mean, he was told by the angel to write down told by God to write down everything that he saw, so he can come to earth and pretty much say, hey, I have some bad news. But even that, Enoch is mentioned in the Old Testament as the grandfather, I believe, of Noah.
Yeah, that is true. He is
mentioned.
He's the is he the grandfather?
I mean, I know he's related to Noah.
He's the grandfather, the great grandfather.
Yeah.
I think he's the grandfather.
I mean, if you look at the Book of Genesis, right? No one wrote down the Book of Genesis.
Right.
It's all he say, she say. It's a story. You could say it's a fable. Now, I do believe in the Book of Genesis. I do, because as a Catholic or as a Christian, I do believe in the Book of Genesis. But no one wrote it down. I mean, Enoch never wrote his own story. No one never wrote his own story. So
all he had was basically he was told by Uriel, here's a pen and paper, write down everything that you see, because I want somebody going down and carrying out the word of God. I want somebody, and Enoch was a good guy, and I guess that's why he chose him. But he's quoted in the Bible.
Yes.
He's quoted. Like, people talk about Enoch in the Bible. So it's not just and this was written, what was it? Way before, was it 1,000 years?
Yeah, it was before Christ. I know that for sure.
Yeah, so this was written before then, and here's a whole entire book. There's an entire book about Enoch, And that's what's crazy. So the Dead Sea Scrolls goes into extreme detail about characters that were just boring characters in the Bible.
I mean, why would they have the Book of Enoch with, this is the crazy part about it, in my opinion, is why would they have the Book of Enoch with 39 original Old Testament books that we use still in the Bible?
Yeah.
It's wild.
'Cause-
if they believed in it, and it was still in their Bible that we use some of it, you know?
Because how many? Can you talk about the amount of Bibles that are in each? The King James Bible.
So I know.
Christian one?
So the Christian one, I believe, is, I might be wrong. So in the chat, you could say I'm wrong, but I believe the Christian Bible is 66, the Catholic Bible is 73, and the Ethiopian Bible is 81.
Yeah, 81.
Um,
So it seems like we talked about Enoch having a lot of information about him, an entire book. Sarah from the Bible, they talked
Yes.
about her, and she was just this boring, bland character. But in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they described her personality. They went into extreme detail, and this was written before. So it seems like you have these religious leaders that took all of these different religious texts going on at the time and really just kind of made their own narrative. They were cherry picking which stories they wanted to go into the Bible. And to me, if you are a Christian, I think you should go back and read these things. But at the same time, you have Jewish scholars and Christian scholars telling you, do not read the Dead Sea Scrolls.
yes.
There's tons of religious scholars that are saying it is heresy. It is a crime against your religion to go and read these. That always, every time I hear that, that always rings a bit like, hey, that's an alarm.
Yes.
Go read it.
Yes, and especially when they look at the parchment of the paper, they always say, oh, it never was during Enoch's time. But again, I'm going to say, you should read it because we still read Genesis. And Genesis was not written during Noah's time.
Yeah.
You should still read it and be knowledgeable what's happening. I don't know. I feel like you should definitely read the Book of Enoch. We can go into a whole episode, a whole spill about the Book of Enoch with the Anunnaki.
It's crazy. It is
Nephilim.
crazy.
Yeah. It's wild. And then you have to ask yourself, the Book of Enoch, is there an Ethiopian connection, right? So a Bible older than the Bible we read today, right? An Ethiopian monastery, Ethiopian Jews claim to have the original Bible. It's 3,000 years old. Their version of the Bible has 81 books, like I said before, significantly more than the 66 books in the Protestant Bible or 73 in the Catholic Bible. The Bible includes an entire Book of Enoch with 108 chapters.
108 chapters.
Wild.
Dude, the Dead Sea Scrolls is like that.
Yeah, it's thick.
It is like that.
Yeah, it's
it is
amazing.
crazy.
I mean, if you were a skeptic, right? I mean, put yourself as a Catholic, right? Put yourself as a Catholic, a regular Catholic, and you have news about the Book of Enoch. What would you do?
Well, I think that those two things can't go together, because if you are a Catholic and you're constantly being challenged by everyone on your faith, you have the Pope, the Vatican telling you, do not read this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, then I'm not going to read it. I don't think you can be I don't think Catholics are going out being skeptics. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
think they hear some news and the Pope's like, don't do this. This is heresy. And they're like, I'm going to go check it out.
Well, the Book of Revelation is in the Bible, right? And the Book of Revelation is John's dream of how the world will end. I mean, how can we include a dream in the Bible,
Yeah.
but not the Book of Enoch?
That and Enoch straight up, that's handwritten. The dude walked around with it and wrote down.
Yeah, nothing's crazy about the Book of Enoch if you were to be as a Catholic mindset. Because if you think about it, right, the world flooded with Noah on it. Anything can happen at any moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what's crazy? I mean, the only thing you could say is Enoch raising into the heavens, and the only person we know that did that was Jesus.
That's
so you
why.
can say it. You can say it as heresy. But I'm going to say it again. How can you include John's dream, but you can't include the Book of Enoch? And skeptics are going to go back at me and say this parchment was different. No. Look, dude, the Bible needs a reformation. It needs to transform.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it does. That's my opinion. But
and I think you can't play the card all the time, because when you have somebody who's like a creationist, like arguing with somebody from evolution,
yeah,
they always go into, well, these are real accounts from history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The stories in the Bible are real accounts from history. And here you go in the Ethiopian Bible and the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are the oldest we've found, in good condition. Anybody can pick them up and read them who reads Hebrew. And here are real accounts of history.
Yeah.
So you can't just like pick and choose what you're going to believe in. Like, hey, maybe open up your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just do it a little. You know what I'm saying? But then you have to ask yourself, in my opinion, is who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Absolutely.
We really don't know, honestly. We have no confirmation of who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have leads, which we'll go into right now. So, who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls? Found near Khirbet Qumran, a settlement that existed from 150 BC to 70 AD, evidence suggests a Jewish sect called the Essenes may have written them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So this spot was found after. So as they were looking through, I mean, in this little area in Qumran, there is thousands of caves honeycombed across the entire landscape. And then they found some walls, and they started excavating and trying to figure out what this place was. And it very well might be, and to me, honestly, almost without a doubt, it's the place. You know what I mean? Just the location of it and what they found here has to be the place. And the Essenes here were interesting people because as we go into this, you'll see what kind of people these guys were.
I mean, they found clay pots that were the same clay pots, are very similar to the ones they found in the caves, correct?
They were the exact same. So they didn't only find clay pots here. This is where they were making the clay pots. So you go to this area in Qumran, in Khirbet, and there's these walls everywhere. And it was almost like a little sanctuary out in the middle of nowhere. And as they excavated the area, they found skeletons around the area. And so far, out of every skeleton they've tested, it was an older gentleman. It was an older guy. So it's safe to assume so far that it was only men here, right? And in this area, they also found the same exact pottery and the same exact the machine that they used, or the technology that they used to make them. This is where they were making them. And there's something very interesting I'm sure you're going to get into later, because you have a pretty good conspiracy theory about this. The clay pots and all the pottery had blisters on them, both at this spot and in the caves, which indicates that they were made rather hastily. So these pots that were made were made extremely quickly and then distributed and hidden. So we'll go into later why we think that is, but that's
going off
pretty powerful point.
Yeah, going off the pottery blisters, signs of a Roman attack, pretty much. Arrows, signs of a skirmish. So they were attacked pretty much, and they saw the Romans coming, and they tried to hide it pretty fast. Going into it, I feel like they needed to hide the information fast. I mean, if I'm trying to keep documents, if you were to attack me, right, and I know, hey, I have something important, it's kind of, I'm not going to say it, but it's kind of like I'm not going to say it, not here. But, so if you were to attack me, right, and I have important documents that I need to be told the truth, I'm going to hide it. So later
especially the whole reason you're being attacked is because they want to destroy any evidence of your information that you've written down.
Yeah, even it's crazy though. The Romans became Catholic, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they attacked.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Full 180.
So
I just spilled this on the fucking carpet you bought.
It's all good. So going into a conspiracy a little, because we're pretty much towards the end, I feel like. They talk about a coming Messiah. You know, could it be Jesus? So the Qumran people they talk about that, the teacher of righteousness and the wicked priest. We may know that Jesus, during the Lenten season, he pretty much was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. I mean, the Essenes were near the Judean desert. They were around the area, and that's where Jesus was there for 40 days and 40 nights. So could they be talking about Jesus? Which is wild, right? A teacher of righteousness. Jesus was right. As Catholics and Christians, we believe that Jesus was the truth. And a wicked priest. We say that Jesus was tempted by the devil in the desert. A wicked priest. Whoa. I'm just saying, this all aligns to Jesus.
Yeah.
And especially if the Essenes wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls with the Book of Enoch, Jesus would have came in there and said, hey, what you're teaching is false prophecy. It's heresy. Because Jesus was in the temple when he turned over the temple saying, hey, you're selling money in my Father's church.
Yeah, this could be a big puzzle piece that's been missing.
And Jesus would have done that. Jesus was like, no, you're wrong. So it's very possible that the Essenes were talking about Jesus as the coming Messiah, the teacher of righteousness. A wicked priest could be the devil. It's wild to think about.
And they do talk about the coming of a Messiah. That's a big part of it. So in one of the stories is about the coming Messiah. So that could have been written before.
Yes. I mean, we can date back the parchment of the paper so back where it's like, oh, it's between 0 AD to 100 AD. We can say that.
Right.
But what if you just met them during the time he was in the desert?
Especially if it was 150 BC to 70 AD, these Essenes were out here. It's very possible that Jesus came by them. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
That all these were written, and it's possible that he could have came through and said, "Hey, what's up? What y'all doing?"
I mean, no one has really ever talked about that being possible, but it's a question you have to ask yourself: could Jesus be the teacher of righteousness? Could he be the coming Messiah? They were saying, could the wicked priest be a devil?
Yeah.
Could it? And I mean, it's very possible, but who knows, right?
Yeah, and it is interesting too with the Essenes because, as we talked about, the kilns used to make the pottery. These guys were strict. These guys were serious, right? So besides the ink wells and the writing tools and the other things that we found, they found large coin jars. So it was definitely like a communal style, almost like a communion, or what is it called in church whenever you donate? Is there a name for it?
I mean, it's pre-communion in the Catholic Church. You donate to the church.
Yeah, or like some sort of.
I mean, it's kind of weird though if you donate to your I'm donating this coin. It's probably been around for past 2 years.
Well, that was the thing. So it was a big communal lifestyle.
Yeah.
So everything these guys were almost like monks, and they did talk about they had some very strict rules. So some of the writings that they found around there was a list of rules and some serious punishments for really talking out of turn or gesturing with your left hand while you're speaking or talking during a meal. So these guys were serious. And another thing that was interesting when you start trying to link it to Jesus during this time is he could have picked up some traits from these guys, because during the Roman times, everybody ate out of a communal dish and they didn't sit down. And normally in Roman culture, you kind of you lean and you kind of eat out of a communal dish and everyone's standing and eating.
Yeah.
But these guys were very serious, and everyone and they found here tables, chairs, and the pottery. These guys love making pottery.
Yeah.
They had individual portions. So they were served individual portions, and they were served sitting down and eating sitting down, which
The Last Supper. And it's insane because they all sat at the same table and they all sat together and had the same portion.
Yeah.
Which I think we were watching a documentary that talked about bread.
Yeah.
And Jesus broke bread for his disciples.
Right.
I mean, it's very possible that Jesus learned about the foundation of a Last Supper from the Essenes. It's very possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that was post-Lenten season.
Yeah.
That was post 40 days in the desert.
Yeah. And they also had a giant communal bath. Talk about the bath. The bath.
Going into the bath. So they had baths, right? And I mean, that could be the signs of the first baptism.
Yeah.
I mean, John the Baptist, he baptized Jesus, right? What if John the Baptist learned about baptism
from these
Essenes?
Yeah. And it's not just you think back then a bath. My house has a bath. Everyone has a bath. No. Yeah. This was you can tell by the way it was made, the care that went into this thing and where it was placed in this structure. This bath was it was important to these guys.
I mean, dude, it's crazy. It's crazy to even think about.
Yeah.
How you can relate some of the things we as Catholic tradition, Christian tradition of baptism, the Last Supper, Jesus in the desert. I'm gonna say right now, I totally believe. If I were to believe in the Essenes, I believe that John the Baptist learned from these people. I mean, baptism was frowned down upon. They didn't like that. John the Baptist teaching baptism, no one liked that.
Especially these were Jewish sects that broke away from the main Jewish community because they felt that they weren't taken serious enough.
Yeah.
They wanted to take their praying and their religion to the next level. So these guys were very serious. You know what I mean? They broke away and they said, hey, you know, what y'all guys are doing is fine, but like we're about to take this to the next level. And that's what's crazy. If Jesus came across these guys and these guys were dedicating, like they had insane discipline in their religious studies. So it's possible that Jesus came across them and was like, hey.
I mean, what if John the Baptist came across first and told Jesus, hey, you got to go there?
Hey, you got to check this place out,
I just
dude.
find it crazy of the wicked priest and the teacher of righteousness.
And why
I find that crazy.
Yes, and why are we leaving it out? Why are we just saying that we're leaving it out? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's wild.
It's because it's new. Because they're just like, hey, we're stuck in the old. We're not going to take any new information. But that's the cool thing about science. And this is a cool part where science and religion can blend together. But religion's always like based off of faith. Yeah. Religion's like, you got to have faith. Don't worry about the new science that's out. Don't worry about the newest thing that came out. But this is the newest thing that came out about your religion. Open your eyes, open your ears, and learn about it. Because you're creating your own theories about it. Yeah. Like this is interesting. Yeah. And this is true. Like this is not made up. These were not forgeries. When they go back, they can decide which ones of these are forgeries and which ones of these are real because of the way when you study and you look very closely to these old papers, it's chipped away and there's salt on it because of the environment that they're in. It's a very salty environment, and there's the paper chips away or the parchment chips away or whatever they're written on. Some of them were written on copper, but you can tell by the time that they were there. They were chipped away. The ink was chipped away on top of it. All the forgeries has the parchment paper that is that old, but it was chipped away and the ink was written on top of it. So we're figuring it out. Like, hey, some of these are fake and some of these are real. And what we're reading to you now, I'm telling you, we've done the research. We're giving you the facts. Some of it is conspiracy.
Yeah, some of it is, yes.
But it's just for fun. But the other stuff that we're giving you, that is true. That this is not a joke.
Yeah. I mean, as the Romans advanced during the Jewish war, the scrolls were rushed into hiding. We talked about the blisters. I'm going to say it again. I feel like if I have something important that is really important, I'm going to try to find a hiding place for it.
Well, was that during the Crusades or what was
No, it was not during the Crusades. I mean, so the Romans advanced to pretty much wipe out, I don't know, the Jewish religion. I might be wrong. In the chat, you can say if I'm wrong in the comments.
Because what was the war? The big war you mentioned earlier that was happening during
the Persian War. I might have been the Persian War. I'm probably wrong, to be honest. It's very possible that I'm very wrong, but I know for sure the Romans advanced and they attacked the
because there was Roman arrows, Roman spears, signs of a scuffle. Yeah,
it was wild.
Yeah, and just the fact that when this stuff was uncovered, it shattered the entire understanding that we have of our biblical history. It's so interesting, and I love this story, especially for you and me, because in our past podcasts that we've done, this is always an interesting topic, science and religion, and here's one where it blends the two. You know? This is really cool.
I mean, so the Bible existed in multiple forms, evolving over centuries. The Book of Enoch suggests ancient knowledge or possibly something more extraterrestrial, you know? I mean, you can go to you can go into information about the ET, you can, but then you can also go into information regarding of Jesus, you know? So, more scrolls are still out there. Will future discoveries change history again, you know? It changed our history with the Dead Sea Scrolls. No one expected that. But the question we have to ask you as a watcher, what do you think, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think about all our conspiracies we're talking about right now? You got to ask yourself that question.
And too, with these things being drip fed out, it is a fact we're going to learn more about this in the future. And even now today, they're still unraveling and trying to. They're using modern day technology to figure out some of these that were like burned inside of the kilns and burned inside of the pottery. We're discovering what these texts say. Every day we're uncovering these things. So it's going to be interesting in the near future.
Yeah.
What we're going to find out. But that's pretty much all we had for y'all. Thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, this is the Arcane Dialogue, and that is exactly what it is, a dialogue. So please drop in the comments what you think, if you believe in this or not, or if it's all just rubbish. And if you really want to get into the weeds, you can join the dialogue over on our Discord server. That's going to be linked below in the description, along with probably a laundry list of other socials and ways to keep up with us, what we're doing. But thank you so much for watching, and we really hope you'll follow us along for the next one.
Dude, that was great. That was awesome.
First one, man.
Yeah, man.
America.